Hi, welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Thank you for tuning in. It's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, as always, and this podcast is going to focus on what's happening right now. So for me in Melbourne, Australia, it's spring. We're smack in the middle of it. There's been some constantly changing weather patterns around the place, so it's a few things need to be looked at every single day and need to be monitored. Watering, especially one of them. We talk about that a lot at the moment. Talk about that a lot regardless. So I'm going to cover off on that. Going to talk about something called leaf or foliage density and what we can do with that at the moment and why it needs to be managed. Also talk about documenting your progress with your trees, so it can help you to see exactly what's happening and also some impact of your actions that you've taken as well. So there's a few other things to cover off as well, but without any further ado, let's get into it. Sorry for the interruption. I really hope you're enjoying the podcast as much as I'm enjoying making it. Makes the bonsai world feel a little bit smaller and a lot more cozy. Anyway, I'd love for you to become a supporter of the podcast by subscribing for as little as $3 a month. This support will go directly towards the cost of producing this podcast, and it's entirely optional. The link to become a supporter is in the episode notes for each edition. Now that's over, let's get into the podcast. Right, I want to start with this notion of leaf or foliage density. At this time of the year, you've got rapid growth. For us in the southern part of Australia, it's all the deciduous have woken up and taken off, and things have gone crazy. And this applies basically anywhere around the world, as far as I'm concerned. That we talk about those inner buds and light and air and all that stuff. It's same old. But the leaf mass or leaf density on your deciduous at the moment is something that really needs to be monitored and managed. They look lovely when they're full. I know, I love them too. But if you leave them go, you'll find that very soon, within the next couple of weeks, you'll separate that foliage pad or the canopy of the tree. You'll look in there and you'll see some pretty weak buds that maybe have just pushed a pair of leaves that are not quite as large as the rest and as healthy, and the colour starts to change. They'll start going from lush green to pasty pale colour and looking sickly, and that's because the foliage mass hasn't been managed to allow enough sunlight in there for the tree to allocate resources for it to do its thing. So if it stays too dense on the outside canopy looks brilliant, looks lovely, but the inside not so good, and that's really what we want for future cutbacks, is to allow for those inner buds to stay on. So all that. We've talked about it many times on the podcast before, but I don't want what I'm going to talk about today to be confused with defoliation. Okay, so defoliation will come or may come a little bit later on in the year for me, but for now, what I want to talk about is leaf removal, purely from the fact that you want to let sunlight and air into the canopy or into the foliage, the inner areas. And what you need to do with that is you need to be really careful of what the species is that you're dealing with, of course, but you need to have it in such a way that you're either pruning branches out or you're removing leaf to allow light and air in there. So let's say it's a Chinese elm. My approach with a Chinese elm that's too dense would be pruning. I would get in there and I would start opening up that foliage mass and removing actual foliage to allow light and air in there. I wouldn't go through and I wouldn't defoliate or remove leaf on a Chinese elm. But if it's a Japanese maple, then I wouldn't be looking to prune out branches. I would be looking to remove one of the pair of leaves in random spots. Maybe it's you focus on mainly the most damaged or the largest leaves on that, like say a liquid amber, something like that. You'd focus on the largest leaves being removed and leaving the smaller ones where you could. But it would be more around allowing light to get in there. And as a general guide for what I do, I don't know if you saw, but there was a show last weekend in Melbourne, the Bonsai Society Victoria, and I had a tree on display in there at big trident maple. And if you look at the photos of that, go back through social media, you'll see it there. That had what I'm talking about being done on it. So the leaf mass on that before getting ready for the show was really quite large and really quite broad. And I was just talking about this the other day with someone, that the apex of the tree was really kind of like a tabletop, was very flat and didn't have much shape or rounding at the apex. So I wanted to get a more rounded shape on that tree without pruning the branches. So I could do that with leaf removal. And if you look at the photos, you can sort of see through into the trunk, and you can see that there's some daylight getting in between the foliage on the external part of the tree. And that was done purely by selective removal of some leaf mass around the tree. As I said, I don't call this defoliation. I don't consider this to be defoliation. I don't want it to be thought of as defoliation, because that's a completely different subject that'll be discussed later on. This is just purely allowing light and air to get into those areas to allow them to continue to grow, because we're still in the growing period, right? So we've still got a long way to go with spring. So there's going to be foliage pushing, and I want to make sure that all those inner areas, all those weaker areas, all the little small branches that maybe just push out that pair of leaves and then get ready to say, yep, that's it, I'm done. They suddenly go, hang on a minute, yep, there's some sunlight here, let's go for it. Let's put some resources to that, and let's make sure that continues to grow. That's what I want for the structure of my tree. That's what I want for the health of my tree. I don't just want branches on those external areas. I want them right back in towards the trunk as well. And then I can choose at some point whether they're going to be viable for the design of the tree, or whether it's something that I'll cut off. But that's my choice, not the tree's choice. If you look at any trees, deciduous is the main thing I'm talking about here. But if you look at where they've got really long branches and that foliage is right on the tip of those branches, it can be, not always, but it can be because the foliage density hasn't been managed on that tree, and it's kept pushing resources to where it's getting sunlight and it can photosynthesize and do its thing. But if that foliage mass had been opened and those buds on the inner areas had been allowed to flourish as well, then you find that you get that pushback towards the branches. And that's where, with our bonsai, we want the growth in nice and tight and dense, in close to the trunk. I'm doing my hands, I'm squeezing like I'm squeezing an invisible basketball at the moment. That's what I want with my foliage mass, is I want it to come in like that. I want it to push in really, really close. And one of the most important ways that I find to do it is right at this time of the year. We're talking mid-October. We're exactly on a calendar date halfway through spring, and it's really important that you get out there and you open up the foliage a little bit, not through defoliation, just through selective foliage removal for density, to allow that sunlight in there to allow it to flourish and grow. So I can guarantee you that by the time that you hear this on Monday morning nice and early, or whenever it is that you listen to it, I will have spent the previous couple of days walking around my yard with a big green bag, or my carry-around bin that I have, and a pair of scissors, and I'll be removing a lot of foliage off the trees. I'll be shortening the extensions of the young growth that's popped out, that's got too strong. I won't be touching the weaker growth. I'll be leaving that for now, and I'll be selectively opening up the foliage of the trees by foliage mass reduction techniques, right? It's nothing complex, and it doesn't have to be an exact science. It doesn't have to make the tree look brilliant. It's just got to allow sunlight and air in there to keep those inner areas starting to grow. So it's really something that you need to be on. Does it apply to other non-leaf varieties like junipers? Yeah, sure it does. Definitely does. Not quite as, for me, it's not quite as important. Do most of my work on junipers in the summer period, and I know that the foliage, while it's starting to get a little bit thicker now, it's really not to the point where it's, because I've done that work thoroughly last year, it's not something that I need to rush in to do now. But if you do have foliage pads that are way too dense, that you can see that they're starting to struggle on the inside and it's only growing on the outside, then yeah, sure, it's time to get in and do some of that work and open it up. Start with the underneath stuff on the junipers, clear all that stuff out first, work on the shape that you want, and start to clear those inner areas. But it is really important that you need to make sure that the foliage density of all of your trees doesn't stay too thick. That said, now's not the time for black pines or red pines to be thinned out. They've got to be left alone, according to my approach to looking after them and maintaining them and decandling them in December. So I've done all my clean out work for and foliage reduction, density reduction, opening up the trees. That's all been done for me in autumn, winter for my pines, my black pines, and white pines and basically majority of my pines. So now's not the time to get in there and start doing that work. There will be time for your single flush pines coming up, November-ish for candle cutting, but that's a future podcast. That's going down the track. So don't jump into that one just yet. But now is the time for you to start working through your deciduous and looking at the foliage density, making sure that you can get some sunlight in there. Do the hand test. Remember, the hand test is that if you put your hand on the other side of the foliage and you can't see it, or if you put your hand underneath the foliage and look from the top down and you can't see your hand, then that foliage may well be too thick for sunlight to get in there. So you need to do something about it. Don't go making it a pluck chook. We don't want to defoliate. We just want to do some foliage reduction for density to allow sunlight and air into those inner areas. Anyway, it's definitely a job for us to be getting on to now in Melbourne. I quickly want to talk about my routine at the moment. I get sent a lot of positive feedback from you lovely people that listen to this podcast. That is my heart and soul in an audio form. People love to know what I'm doing at the moment. They love to have a reminder, and they love to make sure that they're on top of things. So I just wanted to go through what my routine is at the moment. My daily routine. It's not the most exciting, I can guarantee you. So we've got some constantly changing weather patterns. It's hot, it's cold, it's raining, it's dry, it's windy. It's everything. It's 4 seasons in 4 days. It really is hard to put your finger on where things are at. But overall, temperatures increased. Daylight hours have definitely increased. There's lots of moisture there available for the trees. There's food that I've been putting out for them as well, fertilizer. So it's optimal conditions for growth. So I'm getting lots and lots of growth at the moment. But one thing that I am constantly reminding people of, or that I'm focusing on myself, is watering. Watering's really tough. Really, really tough. I don't know how many times I've got to say it in consecutive podcasts, but it's really, really tough, and don't be hard on yourself if you stuff it up. Just try and do the best that you can. But it's something that I am monitoring every day. Every single time that I walk around the yard, I'm questioning it. And the different trees are taking up water at different times as well. That's the hard part. It's not all a broad brush stroke to say everything needs water at the moment. It's not. It's, this one needs it, that one needs it, that one needs a little bit more, that one needs it again and again and again. I'm finding that my prunus that are producing fruit, they're very thirsty at the moment. They're needing water. God, I could water them every 10 minutes and it still wouldn't be enough. But no, they don't really. I'm just joking. But they definitely need a lot more water than the other trees that I've got around the yard. And I'm watching the watering that I'm doing with my white pines to make sure that they're not getting too much. I don't want them to be sopping wet and producing really long internodes and long needles. So I've got to give them just enough, and they're really, really tricky. The black pines, they love the water. They love it. They just don't like to be wet. So I'm flushing them with water on a continual basis to really get that really strong, healthy, vibrant growth that they need. So then when it gets to decandling time, I've got a tree that's in peak condition, not just staggering across the line. I want it to be jumping out of its skin. So the other thing I'm doing is I'm feeding. There's lots of seaweed tonic, sea salt being applied around the yard as much as I possibly can. Filling up tea bags, that's another job that I've just completed again for the second time. There's weeding. Oh my goodness, the weeds. I wish there was such an easy way to get rid of these things, because you start at one end and as you're walking around, by the time you're finished, you're back to the start again. They're back again, and it's just something that I do try and stay on top of. I'm never harsh on people that have weeds in their trees. If they're on display, that's different. But if you've got trees in your yard, just try and get rid of as much as you can, because they just sap the life. They take valuable, vital resources and moisture away from your bonsai, and they're just unnecessary and they're ugly, they're unsightly. And if they get out of hand, then God, they're so hard to control that they can just become a real pest. I think I'm doing too is I'm cleaning the yard. We've got this big pin oak in the backyard. And the cockatoos love to get in there and decide to start stripping off branches off this thing. And so I've got fallen branches and leaves all over my trees. It looks horrible. So I'm out there every day cleaning up that rubbish, that mess as well. And in general, like the grass is growing at 1,000,000 miles an hour at the moment. So I don't know. It's like the weeds. I just can't seem to keep up with mowing. It seems to be something that I'm doing on a very regular basis to keep the yard looking nice. So it's I do look forward to. I love spring. Like I love spring, but I get to the point like this halfway point in spring. And it's sort of like when summer gets here, everything slows down a little bit. The trees stop growing quite so aggressively. The grass stops growing definitely because it gets too hot. Everything starts to calm down, and then my focus suddenly becomes watering, environmental stuff, cooling it down, shade cloth, all that sort of thing. So your focus becomes a lot easier when summer gets here. Sure, you've got to be on guard. You've got to be bang on with how you're looking after your trees, but you can certainly take your foot off the gas a little bit. At the moment, everything feels like it's ramping up and it's getting really busy. And the other thing that I'm doing every single day is checking for pests. There's so many different ways to manage pest control, but to manage them or manage pests, you've got to know they're there. You've got to be on guard and checking. Check the underside of the leaves. Just do it over and over and over. If in doubt, do some research, work out what it is, work out the best way for you in your yard to how to look after them for your trees, and stay on top of it. It's something that your tree can definitely, your bonsai can definitely manage having pests. It's not gonna kill it, but if they're there, always go back to the source. Always work out why. Why is that tree being targeted? Is there something happening? And then you go into protective mode for that tree. And we've talked about a couple of podcasts ago about a methodology that I use, and it might be worth just re-examining that one and having a look, because that is what goes through my head every single day. Luckily, I don't have, or fortunately, I've got lots of healthy trees at the moment in the yard, and the pests are there, but they're not doing any ugly damage. I do worry about things like caterpillars that get in there and start chewing foliage, because you can't put that stuff back on. Aphids, they're there, but they're not so much of a worry for me because I can manage them quite easily. But I do keep an eye out for caterpillars. They're one of the nasty ones. But yeah, that's my daily routine. Do you hear I didn't say there's much work happening on trees at the moment? It's just more that maintenance stuff that I'm flying through at the moment. I do have a lovely tall Radiata in the workshop at the moment that's going to get worked on in the very near future, which I'm looking forward to because it was given a year off. It was allowed to push and grow and increase vitality and to extend a little bit to try and push the bark development on the trunk, which it done. So I'm really keen to get into that one. But yeah, there's not a hell of a lot happening in regards to drastic shaping work in the yard. A lot of it is that routine maintenance, because I am acutely aware, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'm acutely aware of that in areas that if I am slack with it now, that I'll pay the price. Not now, but it might be next year. When you find that all those inner areas have died off over winter. If I'd done a bit more opening up, if I'd done a bit more foliage density management, then maybe the in areas of the tree would have been a bit stronger and a bit healthier, and I would have had a tree which is more complementary to the effort that I've put in. Do you ever feel that the progress of your bonsais or development of a branch or an apex or back budding or anything like that is a bit slower than what you'd like? Well, I can almost positively guarantee you that it's not as slow as what you think it is. And one way that I would strongly encourage you to check this fact is to document what you've done, when you've done it, and take some photos. Because this is the point where you turn around, and I said a lot when people come to the workshop and I say, I've done this. When did you do that? Oh, not that long ago. How long ago did you do it? I don't know. It feels like months. but there's no exact time frame. So things don't happen rapidly with trees. They do grow, a lot slower than we humans. They age because they're designed to live forever. So they don't change overnight in all cases. Sometimes they do, but they don't in all cases. So that documenting and putting a timestamp on something, whether it just be with a photo, because you can look back at the photo and see when that was actually taken on your phone, and you can say, well, actually that was only done 2 weeks ago. So yeah, sure, that's not long. Or hang on, a year ago, this is what the tree looked like. And I found that some people take it a lot further, and they put it into book format and with the photos and stuff. And I love seeing that, because that's when you really get to see development over a really long period of time. Be it 10 years, you can see a massive change, a massive projection. And I do take a lot of photos of my trees, and I don't necessarily document what I've done at that time, but it's more for me that as I'm flicking back through my phone to look for something in regard to that tree, for whatever reason it is, I can go back and go, wow, that's what it looked like back in 2010. Have a look at that. That's amazing. Or you can go back to some that really surprise you and go, that was only 3 years ago. That tree looked like a little stick, and now look at it. It's actually developed really nice pads. So documenting what you do can help in multiple ways. But one of the main ways it can help you is it can provide a reassurance in that what you've done is producing results. Or alternatively, it can show you that what you've done probably was a negative thing, and don't do it again, which is just as important. Don't take it as a slap on the wrist. Take it as I did that at that time of the year and it didn't work. Okay, now I know not to do it again. I'll give you an example. So we're coming up towards peak time for me for candle cutting. Not decandling, candle cutting, which is for some of my pines that I grow, that I develop, where I go into the new spring candle and I make a cut into that new spring candle that forces back budding and reduces the internode length. And one of the ways, like this particular one I'm talking about, is with Radiata pines, or Monterey Pines, you may know them as. And I found there was next to no information on how to manage these trees. And in fact, talking to people in my local area long time ago, there was almost a movement away from Radiata pines because they just kept pushing. They kept getting longer. They kept elongating their growth. And there wasn't a pattern for how to look after these things. And not like with black pines. Black pines have a real pattern on how you look after them, and everyone knows it now, and we sort of follow that path, and we can get pretty good, consistent results in a pretty short period of time. And I was so frustrated because I love Radiata pines. I've always loved them. From being a little kid, I reckon for me, where I grew up and going to the beach over summer and staying in caravan parks and seeing these enormous Radiata pines in the caravan park, I still remember mucking around in them now with these enormous plate bark, and one of my favourite species. And I took it to heart that there was no way of looking after these things, or no pattern for how to maintain them. And I thought, well, they're just too good. And I talked with people in Japan, and there was discussion that overseas that they were being grafted with black pine successfully in different parts of South America, and that might be an option to keep the bark characteristics of the tree that are lovely and how quickly they develop, but you change the foliage. And I thought, well, that's still not what I want to achieve. It's great, it's awesome that it can happen, but it's not what I want to achieve. It's, I want a Radiata pine to be a Radiata pine in a bonsai format. So I then set about doing a lot of work. I had a few in my collection at that time, and quite a few more as well, and different stages, different ages, lots of different scenarios for me to work my way through. And I would go through, and I thought, well, there's got to be a way that we can do this. And I went through and documented everything. I had so many photos and so many notes about timing for decandling, which is a no-no. But I tested it to work out when it wouldn't work and when it would, and how it worked. And then I went through and I started cutting the new foliage at different points in time. If I did it this time, what happened? If I cut it at this point on the candle, what happened? And if I did this and I did that. And anyway, so I could go through over years. Like this isn't something that took 3 or 4 weeks. This took years and years and years to try and narrow down, probably 6-7 years at least, to try and narrow down a technique that I use for candle cutting these Radiata pines where I could replicate it. I love my consistency. I love my repeatability. I love my reliability about what I do. So that's exactly what was going through the back of my head with these Radiata pines was like, I'd heard all these stories, hold back the water, don't fertilise them, and you restrict the growth. That's how you keep them nice and short. And I went, okay, so the flip side to that coin is you're making a really weak tree as well. You're weakening the tree to get all this benefit, supposed benefit that you're getting. And that's not my approach. That's not what I do. So I had to get it onto my program of strong, happy, healthy tree. Number one, that's the first and foremost. So this taking photographs and documenting everything that I did throughout the way allowed me to develop this program for how they're to be maintained and developed and have them flourish. Have them jump out of their skins, have them get to spring and go wow, and look at them and the colour of the needles is vibrant and everything's looking lovely. But you don't want 2-foot needles on these things either. So you've got to have a system which allows you to keep the needles in check with the size of the tree, but get all this strong development of the tree and back budding, and so you can bonsai them. So you can put them into bonsai culture and have them be a bonsai forever. And that's where this documenting thing really, really helped me, because I would do things and I'd be so disheartened and I would look back and go, now that tree looks like crap. What have I done? And I'd go back and go, okay, so I did that, then I did that, then I did that at that time. All right, so I started this spreadsheet where I had the different radiatas that I had in my yard, and I had time frames, and I went, okay, so I did this one at this time, that one at that time, that one at that time, and what's the result? Okay, this one got closer to what I wanted, that one got further away. All right, so somewhere in between those two has got to be a parameter that I can work towards. So then I started refining. It was like this bouncing needle which went all the way one way, then it came back all the way the other, and it started getting closer and closer to my center point each time I did something with the trees. And I went, okay, so now on the different range of trees that I've got at different ages, this is what I do, and this is my result on every single one of those trees. And if I hadn't been documenting that, then it would have been this pure guesswork, and it would have been so bloody frustrating because I wouldn't have known when I've done things and when to do it again next time. So for you with your trees, if you're starting developing something, or if you're making a change to your soil mix, or if you're doing decaling for the first time, or if you're changing the timing of when you're doing a task on the trees, just take photographs so you can look back on it and see what the result was, and look at it as a positive experience. Even if the end result isn't exactly what you want it to be or what you desired, look at it and learn from it. And take heed from the fact that, if you did it wrong last time and you know why you did it wrong last time, mate, that's as good as getting it right. Knowing what not to do at different times of the year is more important than knowing what to do, because that's how you kill your bonsai, and we definitely don't want that. So documenting can really help you and provide some real positivity to you and to your bonsai. Righto, so I want to wrap up this podcast with a couple of things. Now, I've been to Japan, and bucket loads of people from Australia have been to Japan. Japan is open for business, and it looks lovely. I love seeing the photos over there. It makes me quite jealous and envious, and really love the place even more when you see it. Someone puts up 50-odd photos of their time, and it's like, oh my God, I just sit there flicking through them going, that looks just like such a fantastic holiday and such a beautiful place, and brings back so many good memories. And one of the best ones that I had was the Cherry Blossom Festival, when I got to go there with my family, and it's so hard to get it right. The timing, it's such a short window. If you've got any prunus of your own, you'll know that flowering is fleeting. It comes around, but it goes so quickly. So to actually get there and be able to enjoy it and see it as a foreigner, where you've sort of got to plan your flights so far in advance in your accommodation, it's like hitting a bullseye on a dartboard. maybe professionals can do it, but I can't. But yeah, so I got to do that, and I loved it. I really loved the experience. I look back on it very fondly. But now, this is where I believe that you've got to you've got to look on the bright side. I was in a little coastal town very recently in Victoria, and I was walking back from having a surf, and it was a beautiful day. Sun was shining, the gentle breeze was blowing, and as I was walking back up this little street, this little track, there was all these coastal tea trees overhead. And I love them. I reckon for us Australians, one of the best natives, the best natives you can possibly grow as bonsai. They're the Australian Chinese elm in my eyes. Anyway, so I was walking down this little track, and they're all in bloom at the moment. There is flowers everywhere, and I could hear the bees buzzing. There were so many flowers down this little track, and it was almost the sun was being blocked out by the amount of tree that was coming over the top of the path. And as I walked through, the wind blew. I could hear the bees. I could see the flowers, and then all of a sudden, the petals started to fall off the tree, and it was like it was snowing. And straight away, it brought back that feeling that I had, and I hadn't thought about it to that point. It brought back that same feeling that I had in Japan when I got to go to the Cherry Blossom Festival and be in that moment where you'd be looking up and all of a sudden a few petals would sort of come off the trees and they'd land around you and you'd go, wow, that's magic. I got exactly the same feeling and exactly the same experience at a local little beach track, where one of our Australian natives was dropping its blossom like that, and it was truly incredible, and it made me smile from ear to ear. Now, the fact that I had a great surf as well was awesome, but this feeling that, you know, sometimes you don't need to travel too far to get see real beauty in the world. That there's a lot of it out there, and all you have to do sometimes is look up. That's it's really, really positive. And with that in mind too, you know, I just it's show season at the moment. There's lots of them happening around Australia, and good luck to everyone that's involved. And I get super proud of anyone that's been encouraged to get into showing a tree, especially for the first time, because it is a massive thing. And if I've had any part to play in that, then I am so proud of everyone that's taken that leap, because once you've done it once, you'll keep doing it, and it's so good for so many people. Not you, but it's so good for so many other people that walk through that front door that look at the trees. And I was reminded about the shadow, what I call the shadow effect, or the ripple effect. But I'll explain it a little bit further. You know, I was walking through the sales area of a show that was on recently, and someone I know very well who's a podcast listener was, as I was walking past, was talking to some fairly new people about bonsai, and was absolutely so encouraging and helpful, and the advice he was giving was absolutely bang on. And then I saw this couple that he was talking to later on, and they were so happy, and they were grinning ear to ear, and they'd bought trees, they'd bought bonsai, and they were people that were starting the bonsai journey, all as a result of someone taking the time to be kind and to provide really positive encouragement, and to explain things, and to really, you know, just take the time that he didn't have to make these people feel really super comfortable and do the right thing. So Max, good on you, mate. I'm super proud of you, and it's just a reminder that in this life, you know, show the bonsai love, but show it all around, because the shadow you cast is all you're going to leave. And you know, the ripple effect that goes on for generations, it passes down the line to people that know you, be they family, be they, you know, kids, grandkids, be they relatives, be they friends, be they anything. It's the shadow that you cast that's going to be remembered, and it's really important that we're good people. You know, bonsai brings out the best in us, and I, you know, as always, I encourage you to wrap your arms around the world with that bonsai love, because it means so much to so many. Anyway, thank you for sticking around. I do love all of you. I love everyone that listens to this podcast. And I've just checked the stats. It's nearly at 120,000 downloads now. So that's truly remarkable. Truly remarkable. And thank you to each and every person that's listened to any of the episodes along the way. And if you get even the slightest thing out of them, then that makes me extremely happy. So Thank you again to the subscribers. I love you all, and please keep up the feedback, and please keep reaching out if you need help. You're not alone. Bonsai is only one simple message away, and I'm always here. So take care, and as always, until next time, happy bonsai.